We'd like to welcome you tonight to week 8 about prayer and emotions. And this is a very important process. We're going to ding the gong, and I want you to say, I am aligning with, okay? So here we go. I am aligning with, and then say your name. I am aligning with, and say your name. I am aligning with, and say your name a third time. It's the law of threes. So.
That's fantastic. I always feel better when we do this because it just realigns our energy. So here we are in prayer. I'm going to enter into sacred space with you as we say a prayer entering into this training. I bow in reverence to the divine. I humbly ask to enter where I have chosen to ignore. May the grace of God expand my heart with greater love and compassion. Let me see with God's eyes, touch with God's touch, and heal with God's power.
Now, answers to prayers. We all want answers to our prayers, and prayer is our communication with the divine. Every prayer is answered at the level we as humans can accept. Some of us haven't prayed, and we need to start praying. Like right now, I've been saying the Lord's Prayer every day and asking to deliver us from the evil ones. And so there is not a scale of worthiness for receiving from your prayers, but limited perception of what is possible. Chronic pain and illness is often a catalyst to building faith and searching for more. And it's a good time to start praying in our lives.
That's right. So we're going to address chronic pain in this training and how it affects the trauma from being healed. Now we need to look at the health in our world today. Now these statistics are actually approximately a year and a half old, and so it may have altered a little bit, but they're still staggering numbers. So in our world today, someone in the U.S. is diagnosed with Alzheimer's every 67 seconds. That's 1 in 8 Americans over the age of 65. 25% of all adults suffer from some form of mental illness. That's a quarter of the people. So if there's 4 people in a room, chances are at least one of them have some form of mental illness. 95% of all doctor visits are stress related. Now, that's a big number, and we see that stress is an overarching issue that we are dealing with in today's world. 80% of healthcare costs are managing symptoms. Now this is managing symptoms. It's putting band-aids and addressing symptoms, but not addressing the core cause of the issue in the first place. This is where our medical system is definitely broken. We always are looking at the last stage of the domino effect in the physical body and addressing symptoms, rather than peeling the layers back to the root cause. And this is hopefully what we can do tonight. Now, 95% of cancer is lifestyle related, diet and toxic environment. We live in a toxic environment. We have a lot of toxins in our air, in our soil, in our water, and in our food. And in our home, we have cleaning chemicals and our homes are now built and sealed up better than ever before. So we're not getting the circulation in the air, and so thus we have an enormous amount of toxins. And we have to consider that 70% of adults in the U.S. have a chronic disease. Those are big numbers.
Huge number. When I started medical school, only it was 35% of people had a chronic illness. Only 1/3, and now 2/3 or more. So the moment when life changes, each person with disease or chronic pain can recall an event that started their downward spiral. This heightened emotional experience imprints the brain with a long-term memory, and healing requires identifying and giving that emotion a voice. So whether it was fear, anger, betrayal, shock, or many other types of emotions, we must create an inner experience that's greater than all of these, allowing the brain to remold, sending new chemicals throughout the body, because stress and negative emotions keep us in fight or flight, and so we're constantly inundated with chemicals trying to get us away from the stress or the problem.
That's right. So addressing physical pain, we have to look at the fact that every sense of pain always affects the brain. And when it's a chronic pain, we're chronically having a dysregulation in the brain, always looking for answers. Now, it can also worsen PTSD and other psychological disorders. And when we're in pain, our primary attention is on matter rather than energy. Again, it's on the body. Of course, we have a discomforted somewhere in the body. We're going to look at that area of the body. That's where our attention is going to focus, because that's where we're feeling the sensation. But that we have to remember that we are energy beings, and we are 99.9999% energy. And only that 0.0001% matter. But that's where our attention is held in this 3D world. Our thoughts are focused on the past because we're trying to find answers as to why we're the way we are. We tend to look back into our past, trying to figure out what was the driving moment that created this experience. If it's digestive issues, we're looking, what did we eat today? Or if it's muscle pain, we're like, what did I do to my body to do this? We're always looking in the past, rather than focusing on the direction of the healing. Our thoughts are focused on the past, which can keep us in that same energy state. We go into that why me, that victim mentality. And these emotions and thoughts are very disempowered. We're focused, and we start asking disempowering questions rather than asking empowering questions and moving forward.
I don't know what happened.
You're okay. You got it. Go ahead and click on the top. There you go.
So chronic pain, when people have unexplained chronic health issues like insomnia, digestive issues, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, nerve pain, attention issues, they have often gone to multiple doctors who see them through a limited lens and diagnose them with autoimmune. Now, what exactly is autoimmune? Most doctors can't even describe what it is, let alone treat it. But they treat it with anti-inflammatories because autoimmune causes inflammation within the body. But what autoimmune actually is your body is attacking cells that are either infected or diseased and tries to clear them out of the body. And so the doctors say, oh, you're attacking your own body. But this isn't necessarily so. They're attacking the cells that they feel are foreign or are causing the problem and trying to take them out of the body. But your body is never really attacking itself. It's trying to clear out toxins, viruses, parasites, fungus, chemicals, bad bacteria. It is a dysregulated nervous system sending signals that create the symptoms, and it's not autoimmune. There is core causes to everything.
Yeah, this autoimmune language is, it's an umbrella of symptoms where they don't know what it is, so they just give it a label, thinking, well, we've done our part, we've labeled you, but we haven't actually fixed anything or addressed anything. So chronic pain is often the brain misinterpreting messages in the body. Now, there is an old paradigm that we have to look at. This old paradigm is that all pain is symptoms of something wrong in the body. And chronic pain is accepted as your fate. We have pain and this is what it is, whether it's knee pain or joint pain or stomach pain. We say, well, this is how my life is, and we become the identity of this pain. We start making our decisions around our pain. If we look at the weather and see that the barometric pressure is going to shift, so we can't have outdoor experiences, or we decide that we're in too much discomfort to engage in our social actions that we used to do with our friends, and we start shrinking our opportunities. This is an old paradigm about what chronic pain is, as part of that identity. The new paradigm is that chronic pain is an unhelpful habit in the brain. Having a strong support system, knowledge of what needs to be healed, and faith all implies that everything is healable. When we have the right information and under the right conditions and with the correct resources, everything is healable in the body. Thank you for doing that.
There are symptoms of trauma that increase chronic pain. Now, one of the things that happens is we become hypervigilant because we're afraid something's going to increase our pain or cause us pain. And so we become hypervigilant. In fact, we overstimulate our sympathetic nervous system because of this hypervigilance. And it makes us be depressed, makes us have anxiety. Now, depression is, according to the medical doctors, a mental illness. But depression, believe it or not, is caused by fungus getting into the brain and suppressing our brain and making us feel low energy in our brain. So it's depressed. Anxiety can be caused by parasites, and same thing with fear. We re-experience things. We develop addictions. And these addictions can lead to other problems in our life because we're trying to self-medicate. Unresolved conflicts can happen, and fear and guilt can be a process of this. Our inability to regulate our emotions can increase our pain. Negative perceptions to pain, in other words, we're not really addressing the core cause of the pain, but we're adding to the pain by beating ourselves up and not letting ourselves to heal. We get damaged neural connections. Whenever nerves fire together, they wire together. And if we're constantly in pain, our brain constantly starts setting up this pain and we get more receptors for it. So it damages the neural connections that help us to be happy and full of love and life. And it damages not only that, but it makes our nervous system overactive, like the hypervigilance. We're always looking and trying to find out why we're hurting or in pain. It numbs our behaviors because we can't be who we really are because of the pain and the emotional traumas. And we get adrenal exhaustion. If your adrenals are hyperstimulated more than a couple of weeks, you start producing cortisol, which is something that kind of tries to numb the inflammation and the pain, but it doesn't do a very good job. And that's why doctors give you steroids all the time, because it's one of the few things that can, take away that inflammation and pain. And they always prescribe non-steroidal anti-inflammatories because that's one of the tools they have, but those can have side effects of hurting the kidneys, the liver, and cause other problems. Adrenal exhaustion is a major problem in today's world because of the fear and anxiety we're having during this current situation, and it's easily triggered.
That's right. Okay, so digestive issues is the big elephant in the room when it comes to our healing. This digestive issues is one of the major complaints that people have. This has been my own personal journey for the last 10 years. And I really have a lot of compassion with people who have digestive issues. But if you still have been that person where you've done everything correctly, and I can say from my own experience, detoxing and parasite cleanses and probiotics and eating fermented foods and elimination diet and bone broth, and you keep doing all of these things around your digestion and it still hasn't healed, it's because trauma still is in the body. Now, trauma still affects the gut bacteria and their emotional response around the gut. And the hormones of stress alter this bacteria ecosystem. Now, 70% of our immune system is on the lining of the gut. It's a big player, and our gut and our brain is in constant communication. And when one of them is inflamed, the other one is either compensating or is also negatively affected. And when our gut over time, because of the inflammation or where we keep getting bombarded with things that are inflammatory to us, we start breaking down the gut lining, and this is where leaky gut starts setting in. And leaky gut, what leaky gut is when that you get a small tear in the gut lining, and then proteins enter the bloodstream that should be digesting, but it enters the bloodstream, and this ends up causing food reactions or food sensitivities, and even a food. What is the word that
Allergy.
Allergy is the word I'm looking for. So then you end up becoming more and more sensitive to more and more food. And when I was at my sickest, we ended up having to do a test of how many foods I was reacting. They tested 500 foods on me, and I reacted to 492 of them. That means I had 493, because I had 7 foods that I could eat without having illness, which was really a challenge. And I felt like my kitchen was a war zone, and I felt like there were so many things I needed to do, and I didn't know what was safe, because it was safe one day and not the other day. So it was always this dance. And what I want to say regarding digestive issues is, if there is something such as H. pylori, or if there is a bacteria in the gut, or if there, get tested if there's something that needs addressed, get to the root of it and address it, either with supplements or elimination to re-regulate the gut bacteria, and then do everything you can to build up that gut as much as you can. You want to take enzymes and probiotics and help rebuild the lining of the gut, and make sure that you avoid things that are inflammatory as you engage in the healing process of the gut.
Nutrition for healing, there is a lot of confusion about what to eat. Each person's needs are different for their healing processes. We can start by eliminating chemicals, processed foods, and sugars as much as possible. All our food has some chemical in it now, and because the entire planet has been sprayed many, many times over. And so doing something to eliminate toxins will also help you. And limit any food that is inflammatory and causes you problems. Integrating bone broth, eating live raw foods and supplements. Eat in a peaceful and relaxed state. A lot of times we're way rushed in our world today. And we go get fast food, and then we eat it fast. And we don't take time to let our digestive system work the way it was intended. We're supposed to enjoy eating and take time eating and having good conversation while we're eating. And now we're so busy we can't do any of these things. So it's important that we eat in a peaceful and relaxed state.
That's right. And bone broth, why we say bone broth is because bone broth is high in amino acids, and it becomes very bioavailable. And so amino acids is very healing for the lining of the gut. And so it gives you deep nourishment that becomes available to the gut. It's easy to digest and supportive. If you're vegetarian, there are things that you can do to integrate. And sometimes people make broth with vegetables and with eggshells, so you can get some minerals, because the minerals tend to be depleted. But any kind of live food is going to be supportive for the enzymatic action, and then of course you're eating life and you're bringing life back into the body. So when we talk about healing, the one thing that I think is so important to understand is that healing is not a passive experience. We're not taking a wait and see how it goes. When you're in this healing session and when you're having chronic pain, it's common for people just to accept it and then just see when it disappears. It somehow showed up and it somehow is going to disappear. But that's not going to ever heal us. We have to find the root of it and be actively engaged in our healing process. We actively engage by taking our attention off of what is, around our physical discomfort and focus on the emotions and the thoughts of what is possible. In other words, from the brain's perspective, we're unwiring that synaptic connection, unpruning that synaptic connection, because our emotions are engaged and we're strengthening that synaptic connection with those emotions and is putting chemicals into our body, putting our attention onto an elevated state. And a new thing, we start pruning new or start building up new synaptic connections by focusing on what is possible. Healing requires faith and a belief in self, opening the door for greater love of self.
Yeah, and that active faith and belief is what helps us move forward in our lives. And so it's important to have these things. There's 6 steps to maintaining peace of mind. There's first, becoming aware. Catch the stress response quickly. Recognize the emotion. Cancel it and replace it with a better emotion. So whenever you're getting negative emotions, it usually comes from past experience or even past lives. So it's important we recognize it and cancel it and replace it with a better emotion. And that takes practice. Now, breathing is excellent. To breathe slowly and with intention actually pulls us out of the stress response and puts us into the parasympathetic response. A stress response is fight or flight. And we've talked about this a lot. And so it's all about staying out of fear and anxiety and going into sympathetic response. And breathing is the best method for bringing you out of that. And we've discussed this. Also, choose a single thought or image to hold your attention. Something happy, something wonderful that happened to you. You know, one of the things I do when I go to the dentist, because going to the dentist is not my favorite place to go, but I found that if I would meditate or hypnotize myself, I could go through whatever the dentist did with me and not be traumatized by it by going in my mind to Hanauma Bay. And we can choose that image or that thought, and as we're doing it, I'm swimming with the fishes, and I don't pay attention to that drill going crazy in my mouth. But we can do that and help change our emotion. Now, decide what you are in control of in your mind. When we decide what control we want to pull, we need to decide beforehand, okay, if I get in a scary situation, I'm going to have a happy thought and maybe even laugh. And you can do this because if you decide beforehand, you can actually keep yourself from going into fight or flight. So decide something happy or something that you can visualize that will shift your mood quickly and put it in a happier state. Elevating your emotions to a higher state of being will always help keep you out of fight or flight and keep you from wiring the negativity that we experience every day into our brains and into our nervous system. Forgive yourself. Now, forgiveness is divine because when we forgive ourselves through compassionate presence, we can forgive others. Because if we can't forgive ourselves, it's hard to forgive others. So putting ourselves in a state of forgiveness helps us to stay out of fight or flight. It keeps us from being angry. It keeps us from deciding something needs to be done that might hurt somebody. And so forgive others quickly and forgive yourself the fastest.
That's right. Okay, so prayer is our topic for this class, and we have to look at the fact that most people turn to prayer when there is nothing more that can be done, where it's all we can do now is pray. It's the last ditch effort for hope. It's our last pull at the divine, saying, well, we've done all we can in our physical world, and now it's up to the ethers to find the solution. But if we encourage you to make prayer your first choice, so that you are aligned in the early moments of decision making. This supports making every decision through intention and connecting to our higher self. And it's such a beautiful way to look at life is by entering prayer first.
Now, being prayerful is a very good state to be in because you're actually trying to connect to the divine, and the divine is love. And so prayer is active stillness. You literally slow yourself down, find a secluded place, and start talking to God. You can address God however you see God, and then talk to God. Ask for what you want. Be grateful for what you have. Gratitude is the ultimate receivership, and so turning inward and away from outer distractions helps us to focus on the divine, recognizing that the divine is deeply seated within every thought and action that we do. The power of God's energy does not act independent of you, but rather affirms in your consciousness what already exists. But we need to bring ourselves into a state of calmness and talking to God as we pray. And gratitude, thankfulness is very important.
I think that's one of the most, before you move on, I think that's one of the most beautiful statements that we have in this entire training. And I'm going to repeat what Scott just barely said. The power of God's energy does not act independent of you, but rather affirms your consciousness of what already exists. This is a reminder that we as energy beings are only bouncing off what already exists into our ethers. The quantum field, the Christ consciousness, whatever language you use about the great collective energy, it's neutrality responding to what exists already within us.
And if you send out negativity, guess what happens with the law of attraction? It comes back to you.
Right.
So it's important to stay positive and stay in a prayerful kind of state.
So we have this slide on here for a reason, because obviously every slide has a reason, but the reason why we have this is for you to do a check-in about your relationship with the divine. Now, if the word God triggers you, then use whatever word we encourage you. Don't be hung up on the language. God isn't hung up on the language that we call God. You can call the divine, the great cosmic force, great energy, whatever you want to call higher power, but having some kind of a relationship with God. But in this example, if God knocked on your door, what would prevent you from opening the door? Now, you may think, oh, if God knocked on my door, I would quickly answer that door. But think again, because there is going to be some kind of subconscious hindrance of your relationship with your God. So just checking in. Is there possibly a sense of unworthiness? Whether you feel like, oh, it's just me, little old me, when there's 7 billion people on the planet, why would God be knocking on my door? Or fear of judgment, that you have something that you are, some karmic reason why you feel like you need to be judged. Or is there unresolved guilt from the past, where you feel like God is coming here to condemn you because of an action that you did in your past? You may have anger or resentment for enduring challenges if you've had chronic health issues, or you've had challenges in your relationships or finances or in your life in general. You may be angry at God for the challenges that you've had to endure. But look for any of these limiting beliefs that may hinder your relationship with the divine, because it's going to show that somewhere in there, in our subconscious programs, we all have some kind of hindrance to our relationship with God. And Scott, thank you so much for trying to get this to work.
Oh, look at that.
I think we're going to get a high five. You just did this. This is fantastic. All right.
That's good. That's good. So personal barriers to God. Number one, over 50% of us are either have apathy or we are atheist. And what is our version of God? Some of us don't even believe in God. More than half of us don't believe in God anymore, because we're actually getting that gene within our DNA deleted through the CRISPR technology of certain things. And one of them is removing our connection to God, believe it or not. They've removed it out of all the government buildings, and they're trying to get, separation of church and state, taking it to an extreme where they're trying to get rid of churches even. Many people, God is a needy, utilitarian father figure with a white robe whose love is conditional based upon our acts of good deeds. Keeping us on the path to righteousness is tough when you can't even believe that God is love. And God is love. I know this because every time I've had an encounter with a higher being, they are much more loving than we are. And this always makes us keep separate, as a separate, lesser being, unworthy until we perfect ourselves. But the truth is, God created us in the likeness and image of God, and we have that divine love within us. And we need to cultivate it, and cultivate it because emotions, all the other lower emotions, can be resolved through that love.
That's right. And I think, when we talked about our ancestral lineage and how we have these aspects into our subconscious and our DNA, our family lineage, how they believed God is typically how we believe, and how we're raised, whatever religion we're raised in, whether from a Hindi perspective where we have many gods, or from a Christian perspective of a single God, that whatever you believe is typically going to be in relation to a family dynamic. And having a belief that God is always a utilitarian, that is kind of needy and emotional, and that we're always trying to please, is obviously an unhealthy paradigm. That's an old paradigm. So we're going to talk about the difference between prayer and hoping. Now, when I use the word hope, it's a fine line, because I want to establish, of course, faith and hope is very, very crucial in any healing process. But hoping to have an answer is a little bit different. So walk with me on this as I go through here. Now, prayer is aligning to a potential outcome. We align our thoughts, our emotions, and our energy, our visualization, to what we desire. We hold the intention of what we desire, and we draw it to us. It is based on faith and knowing. We know that we are ultimate creators. As creators, we choose by our thoughts, our emotions, and our visualizations what we want. Now, most people aren't doing that consciously. We're having thoughts and we're having images in our mind, but we're not really managing them. They're kind of managing us. And so if we have prayer, we have a very clear intention of what we want. We align those three, the thoughts, our emotions, and our visualization, all in the same. And then we become a clear receiver. It's like tuning the dial of the radio station, and you get a clear signal. When you're having various signals, you're telling the universe you don't even know what you want. So when you get a clear signal, you're praying for a clear intention. The energy around prayer is expressed through love, opening our hearts to possibilities of what we want to create or have come to us. And it's the emotions of gratitude and oneness. We are at one with the divine. Now, in hoping, it's a little bit more of a desperation, where we're pleading and hoping and praying, God, please, 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 God, please, please. And we're separate from it. We have an outcome that we want. And it's like God is playing Russian roulette, and whether he's in a good mood or a bad mood will determine whether we're worthy of it. And so it's based on chance or where God deems us worthy of receivership. The energy is expressed through fear. It's fear-based because we don't really believe that it's possible. We hope it's possible, but we don't necessarily believe. And it's the emotion of neediness and desperation. And the key element to say here is, in a prayerful state, we enter a space of prayer and we align, and whatever we wish is in. Remember, all things in the quantum field, all potentials exist simultaneously. And whatever we align to, we shrink into a single possibility and we draw it to us. In a state of hoping, there's many, many possibilities, and we hope that we draw the lucky ticket and we get whatever we get. So that's a little bit of a difference in there, but I hope you understood what I was sharing with that. The prayer is aligning to truth.
So what is your level of faith? Take a moment and close your eyes. We're just going to kind of go through this and envision your life 5 years from now. Can you envision how you want to look, how you want to act, and your emotions? Do you want higher emotions? Well, guess what? We start here in the present making our future. So let's all start with closing our eyes and expressing faith. And envision your life 5 years from now and what that looks like.
Let's do this with them. So this is a beautiful thing that Scott's doing right now, and seeing where your level of faith is. And I'm going to segue for just a moment, because when I was in the healing journey and I knew that I needed to come back and I was going to spend years in healing, and 8 months in bed was really tough, and just still healing. Even though if I wasn't in bed every single day, years later, I very rarely left our home because I was just very fragile. But when I closed my eyes and I saw my future, the first image that showed up every single time was me standing on a mountain, and my arms are up, and I made it to the summit. And to me, that was symbolic of a lot of things. 1, I was successful. 2, I was climbed a mountain. For some reason, that was the image that come up with me. But it showed me that I had a long way to climb, and it was a big journey, that it was going to be arduous, but I would ultimately arrive. But when you close your eyes and envision your life 5 years from now, I'm going to do this with you. And when I close my eyes in this moment, and I see us 5 years from now, I actually see us teaching still. I see us sharing messages of hope and doing healing. What is the image that comes up for you?
Oh, I see myself as climbing mountains and I love to go hiking, and so I love to be in the outdoors. And so I envision myself being able to go out and hike and enjoy nature and enjoy my family, enjoy my grandkids and even my great-grandkids. So that's the kind of images that I project into my future. But I'm doing the best I can in the now to be as healthy and strong as I can get.
So go ahead and keep going with what images.
So do you see yourself as healthy or aged and frail? Your faith is the primary factor that determines what becomes your reality. So whatever we see in our mind's eye is actually expressing faith, and visual faith is actually very powerful. When Jesus came to me and taught, and in the book, Jesus and Mastership, he talks about he visualized the person being perfected. He'd actually looked at them being whole and fit and complete, and that's how he did the healing. Well, we need to do the same. So we see ourselves as healthy and happy and strong and beautiful. So faith helps us create what we cannot know or see, but believe it to be so. And having faith is the power in creating something that hasn't happened before, because we are the creators, believe it or not. We were made in the likeness and image of God.
And those those messages about faith, we actually had a discussion late at night one time in bed, and I was asking Scott about what is faith? Why is it that we have faith? And these are the things that Scott shared about it, and it made so much sense that we are creators. It's having a belief in something bigger than us that we haven't created before. So now, bowing in reverence. This one is an important slide for me because it was something that I saw in my own personal world when I had my near-death experience. But traditionally, bowing is an act of servitude and humility, where we bow and we show our servitude to God. And what we're really hoping is we're saying, I bow in service to you, God, in hopes of good favor from you, God. So that's the overarching energy. Now, traditions throughout the world have different traditions. The Japanese culture bow as respect, and we went to Egypt for a couple of weeks years ago, and we were learning about how when they bow on the carpets, many men had what looked kind of like a road rash or some kind of abrasion on their forehead. And they were showing that this was a sign that they're in servitude to God. They're bowing in reverence, and as much time as they spend bowing on the carpets, that they would actually build a rash. And this was a way that they could socially signal to everybody else that they're in servitude to God. They're giving a signal to the world around us. See how much I bow to God? I even have markings because of all the times that I'm in prayer to God. It's an expression of worship, and the deeper the bow, the greater the respect. But one thing that was shown to me when I had my near-death experience was that bowing is actually bringing the attention of the analytical mind, the busy analytical mind, down into the sacredness of the heart. And that's the nature of what the true prayer is. When we bow in reverence, we're dropping out of this busy, agitated, analytical, ego-driven mind down into this heart center where God resides within us. And I just think it's such a beautiful notion. And I'm sharing this because it meant a lot to me.
So the power of prayer. In an experiment in the year 2000, Dr. Leibovitch conducted a double-blind study with 3,393 hospitalized patients to see whether prayer could influence their outcome. And they randomly selected the patients with sepsis. Half were prayed for, excuse me, half were not. And comparing the results in 3 categories. Now, the prayer had effects that were good, but in comparing the results, how long did the infection last, the length of stay in the hospital, and how many died from the infection?
Yeah, we sorry for some background noise, but these are the results from the prayer the prayer study that they did. They did nearly 4,000 studies, 4,000 patients that had sepsis in the hospital. Now, the results of this was the ones that were prayed for experienced an early decrease in fever and a shorter hospitalization time. So that was significant. The number of deaths was slightly higher in the non-prayed for group, but not statistically significant enough to show a difference. But the one element that needs to be recognized is unknowingly, the people who were performing these prayers were actually praying for patients that had sepsis 4 to 10 years prior to the actual experiment. These suffering from sepsis were chosen randomly. Half were prayed for, half were not. And they were unknowingly praying for people who already had this experience 4 to 10 years earlier. What this means is that prayer is not limited to time or space. That you can pray for something in the past as much as the future and as much in the present time and have just as much result. It's fascinating. I think that's one of the most fascinating results regarding prayer.
So prayer and the quantum field. Now, quantum law states that all potentials exist simultaneously in the now. And so when you are using prayer, you are not locked into space and time, but as you pray, that energy goes out into the quantum field, and what you pray for accesses the scalar energy and hits the law of attraction. So praying for better health for self and others can have a measurable effect on not only the person you're praying for, but yourself. And it affects the past, present, and future. We are not limited by time and space, which means that prayer is as effective from the opposite end of the earth as kneeling at the bedside of a loved one. It also means that you're helping all of humanity because we are all one. And when you pray, you affect the whole, not just yourself. And so knowing this, doesn't it seem good to start praying?
That's right. So there's 5 elements to healing that we think are crucial in the healing process. First is a desire, a hunger for things to be different. Now, when people have chronic pain or they get a diagnosis that may be terminal or they just acquiesce, they're like, well, this is my fate, and I guess I'm going to die or I'm going to just break down. But when you have a desire for something more, you're placing your intention on the possibility of healing. Hope and faith are simultaneous here. Believing that things can be better, having a desire and knowing that it's possible, that there's equal playing ground if we engage in the field of possibilities. Now, if we don't, then it doesn't exist for us. That's part of the rules of the game. You have to be actively engaged in it. Now, being mindful, moment by moment awareness of who we are and how we are showing up in the world. If we are in that subconscious patterns of negativity and we feel that the world is picking on us and we're a victim to our environment, well, then again, the world is around us is neutrality, and it's only responding to what we're thinking and feeling. Having compassion for self and others. Sometimes we just don't feel well. Sometimes we go through challenges that are really hard, but we have to have compassion that we're all doing the best we can with the information that we have. There are still times when I'm still to have some really low days, or if I get cross-contaminated with something, or I get something in my gut, I may be down for a couple of days and kind of fragile. And my husband is amazing about just navigating around that I have to really have compassion. I have to pull back. I have to turn off all kinds of disruptions because I have to focus on myself and have the healing for me. And ultimately, we have to just surrender, knowing that the divine order is always working with us and that there are many layers of the self that we're working with in this healing process. So surrender and trust that all is well.
So our spiritual chakra system is very interesting. We've talked about the lower 7, and today's the eighth one, which is the etheric body, the creed of thinking. So the etheric body is very vital, and it is one of the closest energy bodies around us. And so when we are emotionally crippled, our etheric body actually contracts down and we can't create as much because we're not expanded. We're not in the parasympathetic system of creation and repair and rebuilding. And believe it or not, what do humans do? We create things on the planet, but we can only do this when we're in that state of parasympathetic subconscious. And we access the subconscious, and the ideas come out of our subconscious. 90% of our thoughts are in the subconscious. And so we need to access that, and the etheric body is where we access that. Now, the emotional body is associated with the 9th chakra, and we all struggle with our emotional body. And there's a lot stored in that emotional body, and it can be negative. And so it can affect our everyday thoughts and what we're doing in our life. And so it's really important that we release the negative emotions and replace them with love or other good positive emotions. Because as we do that, we raise our vibration and our emotional body will expand, because negative emotions contract our emotional body and cause rifts and tears and all other kinds of stuff. So it's important we work very strongly with our emotional body. Now, the mental body is in the 10th chakra, and our mental goes out into the universe with our intent and our thoughts. So we go with our intention, our thoughts, which creates emotions and different things. And then we create, it creates our personality. What we think, what we do, what we say creates our personality, which creates our personal reality. And our personal reality creates our bigger reality. And so we need to be very mindful of where we're at with our thoughts. And if we have negative thoughts, change them into positive thoughts, just like emotions, changing negative emotions into positive emotions. Now, the astral body is in the 11th chakra, and it allows us to sleep and to dream and to dimensionally travel. As a kid, I was always in my astral body, traveling all over the universe when I was sleeping. And it was very invigorating, and I experienced a lot of things as a kid. And as I got older, I went too much in my mental body, and I started having less spiritual dreams and dimensional travels. And so it's important that we look at our chakras, and we'll be talking about these in the later sessions. So with chronic pain and illness, people often focus on the physical body, which is only 0.001% of our actual energy and space within our body. So we need to work on our energy fields. We can't have a physical illness without the energy problem first being created in our energetic bodies.
That's right, and there have been studies that illness will show up in the energetic body and before it hits in physical symptoms.
Usually 3 to 5 years before it
up
creates.
to 3 to 5 years prior to actually having any symptoms or showing any scans. Now, the 8th chakra is the etheric body, the soul star. Now, is another name that it's used for, is the soul star. That's common. This is located about 8 to 14 inches above the crown of your head. This is the energy center for spiritual compassion and selflessness, and the karmic residue is stored in this 8th chakra. Our Akashic records is stored here. Accessing to concepts and abilities, we can draw from that. We can even draw from past life that has been stored, gifts that we had in past lives we can draw from in the 8th chakra. It enables us to achieve an out-of-body projection, spiritual perception, and spiritual wisdom. Now, the one thing that I'd like to caution about is people who tend to be on a spiritual path get very excited about what is possible, which is fantastic. We're always excited about that too. But having a desire to do out-of-body experiences, I've had 7 out-of-body experiences in my life, and most of those happened without any of my intention. And they were very great, of course. But one of them was very challenging, where I got thrown out of my body. And I was trained by one of the people that we trained with. Be very, very responsible with your physical body, because you're an open conduit. And so when you're trying to astral project and leave your body, you leave your body a little bit vulnerable. So if you use crystals, I really recommend frankincense essential oil. It's a protective oil, or any kind of ritual that gives your body a sense of protection. You want to be protected if you start looking into doing that. So it's just a little caveat that I want to encourage, that if you want to seek into doing astral projection, that you do intentional protection around the body. Now, the sacred truth of the 8th chakra is divine love. Go ahead.
Yes, and also you can ask the ascended masters to surround you, the angels, the archangels, the elementals. They love us and they will help protect us, but we have to ask them. So the etheric body, or soul star, this energy center is said to be open access to parallel universes and lives. So you can imagine, you can go different dimensions even. And it gives access to the realm of the Akashic Records, or Book of the Lamb, and the sphere of potentialities in the making. So you can use it for shamanic and energy healing and communication with spirit guides, and we actually can access the void through our etheric body and our astral body, going into the void and creating possibilities, better possibilities for our current body, and bringing them back to us and shifting our body's energy. And it can be instant healing if you have enough faith, or it can take time and you can still heal yourself. So it's a very powerful state to be in.
So in the 8th chakra, when there's an emotional deficiency, there may be symptoms of headaches. Knowing that you have a purpose but don't know what it is, this is very common. I would say, as a past life regressionist, the number one question people come with is, what is my life purpose? Now, that's just, it's okay. I mean, I wondered what mine was for a lot of years too. That's very common. But having that sense of purpose but not knowing what it is all about the 8th chakra. It's the illusion of the ego, and we become 3D centered. This also applies when we have chronic pain. We're focused on this 3D world, the physical matter, rather than our spiritual self. We may have a sense of inactivity or a loss of drive. We become emotionless, and it suppresses the empathic abilities, where we're not focusing on spiritual growth or growth of self. Now, to balance the 8th chakra, if any of these apply to you, practice skills of clairvoyance, out-of-body travel, dream recall, and deciphering messages in dreams, healing gifts, and telepathy and empathy. Now, the 8th chakra is the access point that energy healers work with. When people are focused on sending and receiving energy and healing, they actually are accessing this 8th chakra in themselves and focusing on the 8th chakra of the other. And that's the communication that they're getting all of that information and the wisdom to work on.
So the essential oils for this 8th chakra are copaiba and cypress. And you can apply it over your aches and pains on your legs, shoulders. It supports energy and circulation and diffuse them to feel grounded. You can also put a couple of drops in your hands and rub them together, and it will help. You know, as you know, there's acupuncture points for the whole body within our hands, and our palms of our hands is centered in the heart. Now, copaiba calms the nervous system, creates homeostasis, supports digestion, interacts with neural receptor sites, and puts us into the parasympathetic state of the nervous system. Cypress supports change and helps us increase low energy. It helps with muscle fatigue, grounding, and a sense of security.
Yeah, and before we switch, the reason why we included copaiba and cypress is both of them are very supportive in dealing with symptoms of chronic pain. When diabetes is at an all-time high in our world today, and it's common for diabetics to have neuropathy, and cypress oil is an amazing oil to help stimulate the nerves and help heal the nerves for neuropathy, to bring life back into the circulation. Copaiba is it has a similar chemical component as CBD, and it has a CB1 receptor, so it hits the receptor sites, our pain receptor sites, the same as CBD does. And so copaiba is really good for pain. So those cypress and copaiba are fantastic if you're experiencing any kind of chronic pain. So our tool of transformation is building a relationship with the divine. And so I want you to really start looking, journal about this. How do you really perceive God? Take an honest assessment of your relationship with God or higher power. If you have a resistance to the word, or do you have a resistance of the communication with God, what does that mean for you? Why is that resistance? Start doing some look about that. Do you see God as a punisher, an equalizer of karma, or a rewarder of poverty and suffering? Now, this has been something that's happened historically for many, many centuries, where people give up all of their worldly goods to show God that they're worthy, they're most humble, or they endure horrible suffering in order to show good favor. Here's the one thing that I guarantee, that there will never be an award ceremony on the other side for suffering. You're not going to get a crown, you're not going to get a medal, you're not going to get a trophy for suffering. That doesn't exist on the other side, where they're going to all cheer you on saying, you suffered so much, and therefore we will bring you into the kingdom and glory of God. What will happen is your spirit guides, the people of the energy of support of the divine will pull you in. They will help you with healing, and they will have you have a deeper understanding. Suffering isn't what you're meant to do. We love you, we have compassion, we understand, but you don't get any trophy. So when we endorse suffering as a Medal of Honor so that God deems us worthy, I'm going to encourage you to put that on the shelf because that's an old paradigm that isn't going to be supportive for your well-being. So it's something that every person has to look at. I just encourage that. But be in daily contemplation, focusing your attention on divine love. Daily, choose something or someone to pray for. Better health, stronger intuition, healing powers, whatever it is, or if it, just heal for the planet. Or if you hear about challenges, and of course there's lots of challenges that we could pray for right now. So daily, make it an intention where you focus your thoughts, your vision, and your emotions all on the same outcome, that you focus on the same outcome, visually and mentally. Desire that outcome and then draw that to you, and then do what you can to maintain this state of being as long as possible.
Try and maintain it every day for a certain amount of time. So pray every day and build your relationship with the divine.
So I'm going to share about the Lord's Prayer. The Lord's Prayer that most people are familiar with was originally translated from Aramaic, which was the original language that the Lord's Prayer was written in. And it was translated from Aramaic to Greek to Latin and then to English. And so there was some shifts in this language. But this translation is a translation from Aramaic directly into English, and it's a very beautiful version. So I'm going to say this Lord's Prayer for you today. O cosmic birther of all radiance and vibration, soften the ground of our being and carve out a space within us where your presence can abide. Fill us with your creativity so that we may be empowered to bear the fruit of your mission. Let each of our actions bear fruit in accordance with our desire. Endow us with the wisdom to produce and share what each being needs to grow and flourish. Untie the tangled threads of destiny that binds us as we release others from the entanglement of past mistakes. Do not let us be seduced by that which would divert us from our true purpose, but illuminate the opportunities of the present moment. For you are the ground and the fruitful vision, the birth, power, and fulfillment, as all is gathered and made whole once again. And so it is. Amen. Isn't that so beautiful? I love this version of the Lord's Prayer.
So in review, our emotions correlated with pain can cause a repetition of fear and anxiety, leading to chronic pain. So it's important we stop it and nip it in the bud. But if we're already in chronic pain, it's necessary that faith be used as an element in the healing process. Now, Jesus would always ask prior to healing someone, do you have the faith to be healed? And the person would have to think about it, and I'm asking you, do you have the faith to be healed? I know that I have faith to be healed, and I know I will be healed. But part of that is knowing and having that faith that you are going to be healed. And Jesus could heal through that visualization process. And so we need to visualize our bodies being healthy and strong. And that's what's going to happen to us because we're viewing our future through faith. The sacredness of prayer is to surrender to the highest good of all concerned. So definitely get in on the prayer because it is very sacred and it does shift the whole consciousness, not just us, but everybody.
That's right. We're not going to have a Q&A on this one, but we're going to go ahead with a quick blessing and we'll be finished with today.
Okay. And so we're creating with a blessing, and blessings are a little stronger than prayer because with a blessing, we're asking the divine beings to come and assist us. And so notice as I give the blessing who I call upon to assist us with our healing and with our efforts to become whole again. So here we go. In the name of the Almighty, I am that I am, the creator of the multiverse, and by virtue of the great divine director who commanded me to bless all the humans on and off planet Earth, we call forth the angels, the archangels, the beings of the elements, the cosmic beings of divine love and healing. We ask that the ascended masters assist us and help us with our healing and healing our emotions. We bless each and every one of you that you will be able to visualize yourself in the future being healed and full of life and love and promise. We bless you that your bodies will be strong and healthy, that your ligaments, tendons, bones, sinews, discs will all be perfected within your body, and that any negative emotions will be released and you will recognize what they are and where they're stored and draw them out and replace them with happier thoughts, loving thoughts, more joy, more compassion. We bless you that your brains, your inflammation, your immune problems will be resolved. We bless you that your thymus, your spleens will be perfected and they will clean your blood and send the antibodies to destroy invaders. We bless you that your lives will be full of light, love, and happiness. And we seal these blessings upon you in the name of the Almighty. I am that I am, the creator of the multiverse. And in the name of Jesus the Christ and all the other ascended beings of light and love, so be it, so it is. God bless you all.
God bless you. Next week we have Creating Magical Emotions, Energy to Create Change. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
See you
Bye-bye.
next week. Bye-bye.